Ladies and gentlemen, hello, good afternoon. It's my real pleasure to be here today with you, and I would really like to thank the organizers for the opportunity. The idea behind this presentation today is actually, can this work, please? So, is to make a link. Tech support, please. It's not working. No. I did. I am. Okay, I'm gonna start talking and then we'll see. So I'm gonna try to successfully, I hope, make a link between two important topics: digitalization on one side and EU integration of the Western Balkans on the other side. But I'm gonna do it not from a political angle. Yeah. Now it's working, thanks. But actually from a business angle, because I come from a business association of foreign investors that work and operate here on this market. Having said that, I'm actually going to begin with a political note. And actually from the quote from a current EU strategy on enlargement for the Western Balkans, which actually states that the Western Balkan countries should now urgently redouble their efforts to reform and transform. And business absolutely agrees. And from the side of FIC, we can really say that we will gladly take our share responsibility for this, because what the strategy also says that this is not the role only for the governments. It is the role of the whole society and all the stakeholders which are active here. So there are actually, as you can see at the presentation, three circles, three important grounds. One is digitalization, which is the key topic of this summit. Another is EU integration. And the third one is regional cohesion. So why is this relevant and important for FIC and for businesses? Digitalization, for businesses today in the 21st century, it's about whether you die or you survive. You can't really do business and survive without utilizing the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution. For the regional cohesion, for the businesses, it's absolutely necessary because it brings more economy of scale. And for integration process, it's relevant for businesses as well because it brings more clarity into the business environment and clear rules and on what are your roles and what are your rights and what are your obligations. How do these three circles collide and where is the link? The link is actually in the fact that digitalization helps optimize the processes, be it business operations or the policy reforms like EU accession or regional cohesion. What digitalization does, and we've heard some of the examples in the previous panel and the panels from yesterday and today, is that it brings more transparency, more efficiency, and more consistency. And one extremely important fact, which was mentioned in the last panel as well, is that it minimizes the risk of a human error. That actually means one very important thing for businesses, and that's less potential for corruption. In that sense, digitalization is a tool which can help not only businesses grow, but also states to reform, with the key outcome to have a better standard of living and better conditions for doing business. For the Western Balkans, digital transformation is actually an opportunity to more successfully address various challenges which are out there, be it structural, economic, political, social, all of them to meet EU accession criteria. So how can we actually do that? This is the slide which gives you a hint of how digitalization can actually be used to reach the three groups of criteria for EU integration. One is political EU criteria, a rule of law. This was also mentioned to a certain extent in the last panel. And we've given an example. It's not everything. It's just one example how digitalization can be used in achieving political EU criteria. It's, for instance, EU judiciary, which the Minister of Judiciary mentioned in the last panel. Economic EU criteria, you cannot be a member of EU without having a functional economy which is able to sustain competitive pressure. One of the ways to do it is to enable a regulatory environment for e-commerce, and this is something which actually Serbia is doing these days. There is a working group which is working and finalizing the process on of the new regulatory framework for e-commerce, which is extremely important. And third, institutional EU criteria, which means that you actually can implement in a successful and positive manner the obligations that come from EU integration process. That actually means that you have administrative capacity to do this, and at the previous panel, Mr. Užić talked about it. We give an example of e-government. Now that we have an idea what we can actually achieve, how it can help, where are we now? This is, I think, very important slide which gives us an idea where is the Western Balkans in digital transformation nowadays. This material is coming from the Western Balkans 6 study, and I thank the members from FIC that gave us access to this information. It's a digital transformation gap from 2016, which actually shows very clearly that currently, the countries of the Western Balkans are lagging behind in all of the, in many, not all, but in many cases to where EU member countries are. If you look at this, the only slide which gives a different kind of a situation is one on mobile phone penetration in Montenegro, but in everything else you can see a clear divide between the two. And what we need to do, we've heard that there are many things which have been going on and many reforms in different parts of the region, but what we need to do is to make this slide better in the years to come. How do we do that? So we know where we are. How do we do that? The first precondition, it's a precondition for everything, including this kind of reform, is political stability. And I'm not going to go in detail about this because I think everybody knows what that actually means. The second one, this is absolutely crucial, is actually infrastructure development. And here, again, the info from the study which I mentioned, the red line is where EU is. The line, the gray lines, the vertical lines is where different countries of the region are, and you can see the gap. What we need to do is to make this gap smaller. How to do this, and what does that mean to make it smaller, is actually to have higher quality internet available so that we can actually utilize the digitalization opportunities. This actually means 3 extremely important things. One is more active telco infrastructure sharing. The second one is streamlining fiber deployment. And the third one, I think very, very important, is removing regulatory constraints. It sounds bombastic, removing regulatory constraints. What does that actually mean? It means that you enable network development and deployment of base stations. Of course, taking into consideration all the necessities and all the regulations coming from environmental angles, so being in line with all EU relevant environmental standards, but at the same time not stopping this up with additional requests, which are in countries of Western Balkans happen, for instance, mostly in the area of urban planning, where you have, for instance, when you want to deploy, to put in place a base station, not only that you need to make sure that there is no negative environmental impact, but actually in some cases, like in Serbia, there is a special regulation which sets the number of meters between the base station and the next building, which doesn't make sense. If there is no negative environmental impact, this is really unnecessary, and it's actually blocking fast development of the network. Once we take care of these things, then we go to the next slide. So what is the next precondition is to work not only on infrastructure related regulation, but overall regulatory framework. Here we have a better situation, I would say, especially in Serbia. There we've seen progress in the last couple of years. Here at this slide, you see some of the groups of the regulation which are extremely important. All of them are important for business. Some are directly linked to specific groups of businesses. E-document relevant, of course, for everybody. E-commerce, I already mentioned. Extremely important is video identification. That actually means that you can know your client online, if I can put it like this. Why is this relevant? What I'm really glad on behalf of FIC to say is the National Bank of Serbia has made a very important move move forward in this area, as it adopted a decision which enables video identification for the financial institutions. This is the first country in the Western Balkans that introduced this kind of regulation. It happened a couple of weeks ago, and we think that the first results in terms of banks really entering into this arena is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 months. That actually really means that you can identify your client on a video line and then continue to do business fully online without having your client that it's not necessary for him to come or her to come to your premises. This is the first step. What we need to see in the future is that video identification is not only used by financial institutions, but generally by all the businesses. Of course, digital and digital signature is the next part of this process. One, and we put it in red because it's a hot topic all over the world, even globally, is this fine line and balance between traditional and digital business models. And one important topic, of course, is e-government, which was also discussed in the previous panel. Next precondition is, of course, people development. Artificial intelligence is extremely important, but it cannot really come. It cannot. We still need people. It cannot overcome people in full. When we talk about people development, we talk about it from 2 angles. One is the angle of workforce, and here we already see that in some parts of the region, the necessary work skills are scarce. In that sense, the educational system needs to be reformed to provide better supply for the demand which is out of the market. And the next one is people development in terms of clients and customers. We are talking about awareness of all, citizens of the benefits that digitalization gives for the businesses, but also for the society at large. What are the key benefits if we go in this process? For the private sector, it's quicker market access and actually expanding the market, because it's much easier to sell your products and services when you're online. Of course, for the manufacturing side, productivity increase. Higher value employment, meaning that you are going from blue-collar workers to white-collar workers. And of course, it's easier in positive impact on economic inequalities. Here we are talking about sensitive groups like people with disabilities or people who are living in rural areas, which can have much quicker access to labor market if we have more digitalization in place. For the public sector, the positive things are actually linked to the process of bringing the processes of decision-making and rolling out specific policies more transparent and more consistent, more streamlined, more efficient. They bring better service to constituency businesses, and as I mentioned, digitalization is an excellent anti-corruption tool. Here we have some good practices in place. For instance, in Serbia, the online platform for construction permitting, which streamlined this process from 300 and something days to 28 days, making Serbia one of the best in the world. And in Montenegro, we have, for instance, integrated social welfare information system, which is in place. The key benefit for the regional cohesion is that by utilizing digitalization models, you can actually more quickly and in a better way identify the differences between countries of the region and harmonize them, and thus create a bigger and more attractive market both to the local players and external players. What are the key conclusions? Gap between, as you can see, you could see in the slides, between Western Balkans and EU is absolutely evident. And digitalization can be a very useful tool to smaller, I would say, this gap. Currently, there is no adequate response to be found in speeding up and pushing to the 5th gear, but increasing the economic divergences from EU, brain drain, and job losses are likely to continue. So if we don't advance and we do not utilize the digitalization, this would be a missed opportunity, and we should use it to significantly facilitate the path towards EU membership. Thank you very much.